First contact. The signal arrived at 3:42 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time on an otherwise unremarkable Tuesday. Dr. Elena Reyes was jolted awake by her phone's urgent chime, the one she programmed specifically for anomalies from the Deep Space Monitoring Array. Her small apartment in Geneva was dark and quiet, the world outside still sleeping, unaware that everything was about to change. "This better not be another pulsar," she muttered, fumbling for her glasses. But it wasn't a pulsar. The signal was structured, repeating with precise mathematical intervals. After 15 years at the International Space Communication Initiative, Elena knew the difference between cosmic background noise and something deliberate. Her hands trembled as she initiated the verification protocol, heart racing as she waited for the system to analyze the patterns. When the confirmation appeared on her screen, she froze. "Oh my God," she whispered to her empty apartment. Humanity was no longer alone. Within hours, science teams around the world were decoding similar signals, all arriving simultaneously from a previously unremarkable sector of space near the Cygnus constellation. The signals followed a precise mathematical sequence, not random, not natural, deliberate. By noon, the news had leaked. Social media exploded, markets fluctuated wildly, and religious leaders across the globe rushed to offer interpretations. United Nations Secretary General Liu called for calm, but the question on everyone's mind remained: what did they want? Elena found herself hastily sworn in as part of a newly formed First Contact Division, her expertise in xenolinguistics suddenly the most valuable skill on the planet. She and 30 other specialists were sequestered in a reinforced facility beneath the Alps, racing to develop a response protocol before whoever sent the signal decided to do more than just broadcast. The pattern follows a modified Fibonacci sequence, but with additional variables we haven't fully mapped, explained Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, a mathematician from Tokyo University. "It's like they're establishing mathematical fluency first, then building complexity." Elena nodded, studying the evolving patterns. "It's a foundation language. They're teaching us how to talk to them." 3 days into their work, the monitoring stations detected movement. Something large was approaching the solar system, moving at speeds that defied conventional physics. The nations of Earth, divided on so many issues, found unity in fear. Military assets were deployed, evacuation plans drafted for major cities, and the First Contact Division was given unlimited resources to develop communication protocols. 8 days after the signal, they arrived. 7 obsidian vessels, each the size of Manhattan, entered Earth's orbit silently. They didn't broadcast. They didn't attack. They simply positioned themselves equidistantly around the planet and waited. Initial attempts at communication failed. Radio signals went unanswered. Light-based messaging systems received no response. For 24 hours, the world held its breath as the silent sentinels watched from above. Then, on the morning of the 9th day, every screen on Earth, smartphones, computers, televisions, flickered to life simultaneously. A series of geometric shapes appeared, rotating and transforming in precise patterns. The sequence repeated exactly 3 times before disappearing. In the underground facility, Elena's team worked frantically to decode the message. It's an extension of their initial pattern, she realized, tracing the sequence with her finger. But now they're incorporating spatial dimensions. "Not just spatial," corrected Dr. Tanaka. "See how the patterns evolve. They're demonstrating temporal relationships, past, present, future, all operating simultaneously." Elena's pulse quickened. "They don't think like we do. Their consciousness might exist across multiple dimensions of time." The media dubbed them the Voidborn, visitors from the depths of space, whose technology and physiology remained a mystery. All that was known was their extraordinary intelligence and their apparent interest in humanity. After 3 days of intensive analysis, Elena's team developed a response using the same mathematical principles, acknowledging the message and requesting clarification of intent. They transmitted it through every available medium, hoping the Voidborn would recognize their attempt. Hours passed, then days. No response came. On the 5th day after the transmission, Alina woke with a start, a realization forming in her mind. She rushed to the lab, brushing past security and startling her colleagues. "We've been thinking about this all wrong," she announced, pulling up their message analysis. "We responded in their language, but we maintained our linear perspective. Look at this." She rearranged the response sequences into a multi-dimensional matrix. If they perceive time and space simultaneously, our linear response would seem childish, incomplete. She began restructuring their message, incorporating quantum principles and non-Euclidean geometry. "We need to demonstrate that we understand complexity, not just parrot it back to them." For the next 16 hours, the team worked without breaks, rebuilding their response from the ground up. When they finally transmitted the new message, it wasn't just mathematical. It was a conceptual framework that acknowledged multiple simultaneous realities. The response came within minutes. Every electronic device on Earth displayed a new pattern, one that human minds could barely comprehend. But Alina saw it immediately. "It's an invitation," she whispered, "and a test." The patterns resolved into clear instructions. Earth was to select 12 representatives to board the central vessel. There, humanity would face a challenge. Success meant acceptance into a broader cosmic community. Failure meant. The message didn't specify, but the implication was clear. Global debate erupted. Was this a trap? Should Earth comply? Military leaders argued for caution. Religious figures saw divine opportunity, and politicians worried about who would represent humankind. In the end, pragmatism won. The Voidborn's technology was so advanced that if they wanted to harm Earth, they could have done so immediately. Their test, whatever it might be, represented humanity's best chance. Alina was among the 12 chosen, along with Dr. Tanaka, quantum physicists from India and Russia, a game theory specialist from Nigeria, neurologists from Brazil and Australia, a philosopher from Egypt, an AI researcher from South Korea, and 3 others selected for their unique cognitive abilities. As the transport shuttle lifted off from Geneva International Airport, Alina watched the Earth growing smaller beneath them. The enormity of their task pressed down upon her. 12 humans, carrying the hopes of 8 billion souls. The shuttle approached the central vessel, a massive construct of what appeared to be liquid obsidian, constantly shifting yet maintaining its overall structure. No visible engines, no external features, just pure mathematical perfection expressed in physical form. As they neared, a section of the hull rippled and opened, revealing a cavernous docking bay. The shuttle was drawn inside by an invisible force, settling gently onto a surface that seemed to both exist and not exist simultaneously. The air inside was breathable, the gravity Earth standard. The 12 representatives exited the shuttle cautiously, looking around at what appeared to be an empty chamber with walls that seemed to recede into infinity. Then the space shifted. A figure materialized before them, not solid, but a swirling collection of geometric patterns that vaguely suggested a humanoid form. It spoke not with sound, but through patterns that formed directly in their minds. "We are the Voidborn. We travel the great darkness between stars, seeking those who might join the collective." Alina stepped forward. "We are honored by your invitation. We come seeking understanding and peaceful exchange." The entity's patterns shifted, creating a sensation that felt almost like amusement. "Understanding is earned, not given. Your species has reached a critical developmental stage. You manipulate your environment, harness energy beyond your biological needs, and have begun to comprehend the fundamental structures of reality. Yet you remain bound by limitations of perception, of thought, of imagination." "All species have limitations," Alina replied carefully. "We seek to overcome ours through learning and growth." "Admirable, but insufficient. The universe is unforgiving to those who cannot adapt. The test will determine if your species deserves to continue on its current evolutionary path." Dr. Tanaka stepped forward. What is the nature of this test? The entity's patterns shifted again, this time creating a sense of anticipation. You will see. Prepare yourselves. You have one planetary rotation to solve what is presented. Success grants you entry into the collective and protection from what lies beyond. Failure returns you to isolation, until you evolve further or until you encounter others. The entity dissolved, leaving the 12 humans alone in the vast chamber. Moments later, the walls began to change, transforming into something that resembled an enormous three-dimensional puzzle box with constantly shifting sections and symbols flowing across its surface. As the full magnitude of the challenge revealed itself, Alina felt a chill run down her spine. The test had begun, and humanity's future hung in the balance. The 12 representatives spread out, examining different sections of the enormous puzzle. Its complexity was overwhelming, not just spatially and mathematically complex, but conceptually alien. Patterns within patterns, each shifting according to rules that seemed to contradict basic logic. We need to document everything, Alina instructed, activating her data tablet. Every pattern, every shift. Look for repeating sequences, anchor points, anything stable. As night fell over Earth below, those watching from the planet could only wait and wonder. The fate of humanity rested in the hands of 12 individuals facing a test designed by beings who perceived reality in ways humans were never evolved to comprehend. Inside the alien vessel, Alina stared at the shifting puzzle wall, the patterns blurring before her exhausted eyes. 6 hours in, and they had barely scratched the surface of understanding the challenge. She couldn't shake the growing feeling that this wasn't just difficult, it might be impossible by design. Why would the Voidborn offer a test that couldn't be passed? The answer came to her in a moment of clarity that felt almost like dread. Perhaps the test itself wasn't what they thought it was at all. The human factor. The puzzle chamber had transformed during their 8 hours aboard the Voidborn vessel. What began as geometric patterns on the walls now extended throughout the entire space, symbols and equations floating in midair, restructuring themselves whenever the humans appeared to make progress. It was like climbing a mountain that constantly grew taller. Dr. Tanaka slumped against a wall, exhaustion evident in his normally composed features. The mathematical progression is beyond anything in human science. It's as if they're asking us to complete quantum calculations with an abacus. Alina paced the chamber, her mind racing. The 12 representatives had split into teams, each approaching the problem from different angles, but all reached the same conclusion. The complexity scaled just beyond human cognitive capacity. It doesn't make sense, said Dr. Imani Okoro, the game theorist from Nigeria. If their goal is to evaluate our potential, why create a test that's fundamentally impossible for our minds to solve? Alina stopped pacing. Unless that's exactly the point. The others turned to her, confusion and exhaustion on their faces. What if this isn't about solving the puzzle at all? Alina continued, excitement building in her voice. What if they're testing how we approach an impossible problem? Our process, not our solution. Dr. Vasily Petrov, the Russian quantum physicist, nodded slowly. A species test, not an intelligence test. Exactly. Alina pointed to the shifting patterns. Notice how the complexity increases precisely when we approach certain solutions. It's designed to frustrate linear progress. The group gathered around her as she explained her theory. The Voidborn weren't testing whether humans could solve their puzzle. They were observing how humans responded to an unsolvable challenge. They're evaluating our adaptability, Dr. Min-Jun Park, the AI researcher, concluded. Our capacity to recognize patterns in chaos and find alternative approaches. With this new understanding, they altered their strategy. Instead of trying to solve the entire puzzle, they focused on understanding its fundamental structure, the rules governing its changes, the relationship between symbols that seemed unrelated. As they worked, Alina noticed something odd in the pattern shifts. These sequences, they're not random. They're responsive. She approached one section where symbols flowed like liquid mercury. When she touched a particular sequence, the pattern reacted, shifting into a new configuration. Not random, interactive. It's not just a test, she realized. It's a communication medium. The puzzle itself is trying to talk to us. Through trial and error, they discovered that the puzzle responded differently based on their emotional states and collaborative approaches. When they competed individually, the complexity increased. When they collaborated, certain pathways stabilized. 12 hours into their allotted time, Alina made another breakthrough. She gathered everyone in the center of the chamber. We've been thinking of this as a challenge to overcome, but what if it's actually an invitation to engage? Look how the patterns mirror our interactions, not just our logical processes, but our emotional responses. Dr. Sofia Mendes, the Brazilian neurologist, nodded excitedly. Like a nervous system responding to stimuli. The patterns amplify when we exhibit stress or competition, and stabilize when we demonstrate cooperation. Alina finished. I think they're not just testing our intelligence, they're evaluating our empathy, our capacity for collective problem solving. With this insight, they reorganized their approach. Instead of attacking the puzzle directly, they began to harmonize their efforts, working in unison, complementing each other's strengths, supporting where others faltered. Gradually, the wildly shifting patterns began to stabilize. Areas of the puzzle became fixed, creating anchor points from which they could work outward. The 12 humans moved around the chamber like dancers in a coordinated performance, each contribution building on the last. 18 hours in, exhaustion taking its toll, Alina stepped back to observe their progress. They had achieved something remarkable. About 30% of the puzzle had stabilized into a coherent structure, but it was nowhere near complete, and their deadline approached. During a brief rest period, she sat alone, studying her notes. Something nagged at her, a pattern within the pattern that seemed familiar yet elusive. She closed her eyes, letting her subconscious mind work on the problem. When she opened them again, she understood. Everyone, she called out, her voice urgent. I need to show you something. The team gathered as she projected her tablet's display onto the wall. Look at these sequence groupings. They're not just mathematical, they're historical. She highlighted sections of the pattern. These structures mirror the developmental stages of technological civilizations. Here's primitive tool use. Here's agricultural revolution. Here's industrial development. And here's where we are now. The nuclear age, early space exploration, quantum computing. Dr. Park's eyes widened. And this section that keeps shifting, that's our potential futures. Exactly. The puzzle isn't just a test, it's a model of civilizational development. They've done this before, with other species. She brought up another section of the puzzle. And look here, these dead ends, these collapsed pathways. I think they represent civilizations that failed. The implications hit them all at once. The Voidborn weren't just testing humanity. They were evaluating whether Earth would become another dead end in their grand cosmic model. So what's the right answer? Asked Dr. Abdul Rahman, the philosopher. What outcome are they looking for? Alina studied the patterns. I don't think they have a specific solution in mind. I think they're genuinely curious about which path we'll choose. With only 4 hours remaining, they made a radical decision. Instead of trying to stabilize the entire puzzle, clearly impossible within their time frame, they would focus on a single pathway through the chaos. Not the safest path, not the most obvious, but the one that best represented humanity's potential. Working together, they began to shape their response. Dr. Tanaka and the physicists handled the mathematical foundations. Dr. Okoro and the cognitive specialists mapped decision pathways. Dr. Mendes and the neurologists incorporated models of human consciousness and social dynamics. And Alina worked on something the others initially questioned. She integrated humanity's contradictions into the model. The capacity for both cruelty and compassion, the tension between individual achievement and collective good, the unique human ability to act against self-interest for abstract ideals. Are you sure? Dr. Petrov asked her. Shouldn't we present the best version of ourselves? Elena shook her head. We need to show them who we really are, contradictions and all. If they've done this before, they'll recognize a sanitized version. Our messiness is our strength. As the final hour approached, their pathway through the puzzle took shape. Not perfect, not complete, but authentically human. It showed a species capable of tremendous destruction, yet boundless creativity, prone to tribalism, yet capable of transcendent cooperation. It acknowledged humanity's flaws while demonstrating our capacity to recognize and overcome them. Minutes before their deadline, the pathway stabilized. It wasn't the entire puzzle, perhaps only 15% of the total, but it was coherent, integrated, and uniquely human. The chamber fell silent as the countdown reached 0. The floating patterns froze in place, then gradually contracted, flowing toward the center of the room, where they coalesced into the vaguely humanoid form they had first encountered. You have completed your attempt, the thought voice of the Voidborn stated. Elena stepped forward as the designated spokesperson. We have presented our solution. It is incomplete. Yes, she acknowledged. Because we are incomplete. We're still evolving, still learning. But we've shown you a path forward that honors who we are and who we might become. The entity seemed to study their partial solution, its form shifting as it processed their work. Interesting. Most species attempt to solve the entire model. They fail, of course. It is designed to be unsolvable within the constraints provided. Dr. Raman stepped forward. You design tests that cannot be passed. That seems cruel. Not cruel. Revealing. The purpose is not to solve the unsolvable, but to demonstrate how a species approaches the impossible. Some respond with force, trying to break the puzzle. Others withdraw, accepting defeat. Many fragment into competing factions. The entity's form expanded slightly, patterns flowing faster. You are the first to acknowledge your limitations and work within them to create something unique. You did not try to be what you are not. You showed us who you are. Elena felt a wave of relief, quickly tempered by caution. Does this mean we've passed your test? There is no pass or fail in the traditional sense. There is only information, data that helps us categorize emergent intelligences throughout the cosmos. Categorize for what purpose? Elena pressed. The entity's patterns shifted into what Elena now recognized as the equivalent of contemplation. The universe is ancient, filled with intelligences older than your solar system. Some are benevolent, others indifferent, a few actively hostile to emerging consciousness. We are gatekeepers. We identify which new species might contribute to the greater cosmic community and which might require management. A chill ran through the room. Your approach was unexpected. Most species at your development stage are either rigidly logical or chaotically emotional. You balance both, imperfectly, but with potential. You incorporate your contradictions rather than denying them. The entity expanded further, filling the chamber with swirling patterns. We will withdraw our vessels from your orbit. Your world will be marked in the Galactic Registry as an emerging intelligence of interest, not to be interfered with, but observed. In time, when you've developed further, representatives will return. How much time? Elena asked. Time is relative, the entity responded, a hint of what might have been humor in its thought voice. But by your measurement, perhaps a century, perhaps less if your development accelerates. The entity began to dissolve, its patterns spreading throughout the chamber. One final offering, a gift in recognition of your unique approach. The walls of the chamber suddenly blazed with light, patterns streaming directly into their minds. Elena gasped as information flooded her consciousness. Not specific technologies, but principles, foundations, ways of thinking about problems that had eluded human science. Not answers, the entity clarified as it faded, but better questions. Your path remains your own to walk. As suddenly as it had begun, the transfer ended. The 12 representatives stood in stunned silence, their minds reeling from the experience. The chamber walls parted, revealing their shuttle exactly as they had left it. Their time with the Voidborn was over. The return to Earth was met with worldwide celebration. The Voidborn vessels departed as promised, vanishing from sensors as they accelerated beyond the solar system. But they left behind a transformed humanity. The 12 representatives carried within them seeds of understanding that would revolutionize fields from mathematics to medicine, physics to philosophy. Not specific technologies that might destabilize human development, but foundational concepts that would allow humanity to reach those discoveries through their own efforts. 3 months after the encounter, Elena stood at a podium at the United Nations, addressing the General Assembly. The Voidborn didn't come to judge us or save us. She explained to the assembled delegates and the billions watching worldwide. They came to categorize us, to determine what kind of species we are becoming. She paused, looking out at the faces before her. What they discovered, what surprised them, was that humanity doesn't fit neatly into their existing categories. Our contradictions, which we often view as weaknesses, may actually be our greatest strength. We are logical yet intuitive, individual yet collective, capable of terrible destruction yet boundless creativity. The chamber was silent, hanging on her every word. They gave us a glimpse of the cosmos beyond our solar system, a universe teeming with intelligences, some so alien we can barely comprehend them. And in that vast cosmic community, our unique human perspective has value. She smiled, confidence in her voice. We passed their test not by being perfect, but by being authentically human. In a universe of specialists, we are generalists, adaptable, creative, resilient. That is our gift to the stars. As she stepped away from the podium to thunderous applause, Elena's thoughts turned to the future. The Voidborn had promised to return, and humanity had much to accomplish before then. A century wasn't much time to prepare for their next cosmic examination. But if there was one thing the Voidborn had learned about humans, it was this: never underestimate a species that turns impossibility into opportunity. 5 years later, Elena stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned starship Curiosity, Earth's first vessel designed for interstellar exploration. Incorporating principles gleaned from the Voidborn encounter, it could achieve speeds previously thought impossible. As captain of this historic mission, she would lead humanity's first diplomatic expedition beyond the solar system. Their destination, a nearby star system where, according to the information shared by the Voidborn, another young species was emerging. "Ready, Captain?" asked her first officer, Dr. Tanaka, now a close friend after their shared experience. Elena nodded, watching as Earth receded in the view screen. The Voidborn had tested humanity and found something unexpected, a species of contradictions with unique potential. Now it was time for humans to step onto the galactic stage, not as subjects being tested, but as explorers with something valuable to contribute. "Course laid in," reported the navigator. "Take us out," Elena commanded. "Standard exploration protocol. Let's show the universe what humanity has to offer." The Curiosity accelerated, carrying humanity's representatives toward their cosmic future, not as perfect beings, but as perfectly human ones, and in a universe of endless diversity that might just be exactly what was needed.